Hello guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today we will dive into one of the most important phases of software development lifecycle, which is testing. We all know that testing is very important when we are implementing an application because it gives us a cover when something goes wrong. When we implement a new feature, when we fix a bug, when we change something in our code base, the first defensive line against all the bugs that we might introduce, especially in production, is testing. So when we talk about testing, we talk mainly about three types of testing: unit testing, integration testing, and end-to-end testing. In this first video, we will start with unit testing, and we will focus on using JUnit 5 and Mockito with the most powerful and the best framework ever, Spring Framework. But later on, and in the coming videos, we will see how to write integration tests with test containers. We will see the benefits and why we need to use test containers and what are the advantages of using test containers in our integration tests. After that, of course, we will cover and we will see how we can test our controllers. So like this, we can have kind of a full workflow and like a full working tests. And then we will cover end-to-end tests by creating few scenarios that will cover most or like all the scenarios that we have within our application. And then of course we will move on to the other parts, which is like setting up a CI/CD pipeline, dockerizing the application, and also deploying the application to a real VPS server, not like a local one or something like that, but it's gonna be a real one. So before we start diving into this video, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also ring the bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos, and of course hit the thumbs up and leave me a comment what you want to see. So with no further ado, let's get started. Alright, so before we start implementing, let's first understand how the test is organized in the Spring Boot project. So the first thing, or like we will try to start with the to-do package or the to-do domain. And first of all, we will test, or like we will write unit tests for this to-do service implementation. All right. So we want to test the functionalities that we have in here. So the first thing, we need to create a test class. So there are two ways. Whether you can do it manually by just going to the test package, and in here you have the base package, which is com.alibo.app, which is, as you can see, it is the same package as in here. So the recommendation or the best practice is to follow the same package naming also in testing. So like this, you can easily identify the test classes. So for example, what I mean with this, so in this to do, we have an implementation package, and inside this implementation package, we have our to do service implementation. So if we want to write a test class for this to do service implementation, we just come here and create a package called to do and a sub package called implementation, and then we can create a to do service implementation test class. All right, so this is the way. So this is if you want to do it manually. The second option is you can use the shortcut. So here I think there is generate, and then you can generate a test class from here. So if you right click the class and then you have the generate option, and then you can create or like click on test. So this will generate a test, and here the test library, make sure that you are using JUnit 5, and then I will show you the rest. So here you don't need to generate the members, and also if you need the before and after, you can also tick these two options, but I will show you or how to do everything manually. All right, so this is the first option. The second one, you can use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command-Shift-T, and it will be displayed in here for Windows and Linux. So now when you click Command-Shift-T, if you have a class or a test class for the current class, it will automatically navigate you there. Otherwise, it will propose or suggest if you want to create a new test class. So let's go ahead and create a new test class, and then I will just hit OK. All right. So here we have our to-do service implementation class. All right. So since we mentioned in the introduction that we will use Mockito to mock all the objects, all right? So the first thing that you need to do or to think of is to extend with Mockito extension, all right? So use this annotation, extend with, and then Mockito annotation dot class. So this means that this test class in here will use the power of the library Mockito in order to do all the stuff. All right. So if you forget to add this annotation, so your test might not work. All right. So this is the first thing. The second one, you see that we have a class name. So if I run this class, so it's an empty one, so it will execute automatically and it will say no tests found. All right. So but if I write in here, let me just add a test and let's say void here create to do, and let's say let's keep it empty if you want to. I just want to show you how it's going to be displayed. So here you see that we have to do service implementation or impl test. So this is the class name. If you want to change that, simply add a display name annotation, and in this display name, let's say for example to do service implementation unit tests. All right. So because this is the unit tests part, and then we will write, and I will show you how to write integration tests that will communicate directly with a database. And for that, as I mentioned, we will use test container. So now if I run it again, so instead of displaying only this class name, it will display this display name, and the same in here. So here you have create to do. You can also use the same annotation at a method level. So here, for example, create to do test method. So I will delete everything, but just to show you how this works. So here, when on this view right here, so let me first explain this view and then we will move on. So here you see this one, you can rerun the whole class. All right, so all the methods that you have in here, they will be re-executed. Okay, and now as you can see, we have a different display name, which is this one. Also, you have two filters right here. So here you have show past. So this one is by default checked, but if you uncheck it, it will not display all the past ones. So here, for example, let's say fail, just to fail the test. And if I run it again, even with this one unticked, so this one is unchecked, so the test will be displayed. If you have some other tests, so let me add another one. So void success, just like that. I will rerun the whole class, and just to show you the filter. So here, if I uncheck this one, it will keep only on displaying only the failing ones. And also here I can add a test. So let's call this one ignored, and here I will say just ignore. All right, or disable. So there is this disabled annotation, not a display name. So it's a disabled. So now if I rerun the whole class, so we will see here that this one is ignored and this one. So if I check this one, so I see the three test methods. All right. If I uncheck this one, so the disabled test will be also filtered, and the same if I check or uncheck the success or like the past tests. All right. So this is very important. Also, there is something in here. So here, as I mentioned, you will rerun the whole class. Like this means all the tests that you have here, you will rerun them. Also, you have this option where you can just rerun the failed test. So if I click on this one, you will see it will only execute the failed ones. And also here you can enable like an automatic rerun. All right. So this is the basic things that I want to show you before we start implementing anything. So now let's go back here. How I can identify, or like how can I proceed with tests? How can I write tests? What are the methods that I need to write? What is the logic that I need to test? So this is what we will see in this part. Alright, so now I will assume that I'm not the one who wrote the test or the implementation of this class or of this project. So I will assume that I just freshly joined the project, and my first task is to write tests for this implementation, or like to do service implementation. So the first thing that I will do, and here since we mentioned that we will use Mockito, all right, so the first thing that I will do is to identify all the dependencies that I need to execute this class. And the first thing that I see in here, that I have 3 injections. All right, so we are injecting 3 objects. We have to-do repository, category repository, and to-do mapper. All right, so the first thing, so here just keep in mind, what do we want to test? So I will just create a private to-do service implementation. I will call it just to-do service. All right. So just to keep it simple. So this is the one, or like this is the class we want to test. So this is what we want to test. All right. But this to-do service implementation, it needs some dependencies. All right. So the first thing I need to think about, I will create 3 objects in here. So I will declare 3 objects in here. I will remove the final keyword since I don't need it right now. And then I will use the @mock annotation. So as you can see, it's from org.mockito. So these I need to mock them because I don't want to directly interact with a database. All right, or like even the real implementation for the mapper, for example. So for the mapper, you can also keep it. So here, normally what we do, or like what we usually do if we want to write integration test, we would annotate this one with auto wire to inject it from the Spring context. But this is not the case. So what we want to do here is to write unit tests with mocking all the objects. All right, so here we have an annotation called inject mocks. All right, so these inject mocks, if we check the documentation, so mark a field on which injection should be performed. So it allows shorthand mock and spy injection, minimizes repetitive mock and spy injection. So here also there is something which is very important in here. So Mockito will try to inject mocks only either by constructor injection, property injection, or setter injection in order as described below. So as described below means as in here. So the first one, it will be constructor injection, then property setter injection, and then field injection. So it depends on how you inject your dependencies or your beans in your class. So Mockito will use this order as mentioned in here. All right. So, and here this inject mocks, it will try to inject anything that you declare here and you mark it as a mock. All right. So it will try. So then when it will create an instance of the to-do service implementation, it will see that we have 3 mocks in here, and all these 3 mocks are also required in here. So since here we have this required args constructor, this means in the compiled code we have a constructor with these 3 parameters, all right, or like these 3 beans, and they will be automatically injected. So this is the first step. Next, what I need to do. So here, first I will read the code. I will check all the methods that we have in here. So in here, we see that we have a create to do, update, find to do by, find all, and so forth. So here, as I mentioned earlier, I'm assuming that I do not know the code. I'm not the one who wrote this code. So I have to understand what this code is doing, and then I will proceed to writing tests. All right. So the first thing that I would identify is I need to write a create to do test coverage. All right. So what I mean with that. So here, the first thing that we are doing is we check and return category. So let's jump to this method. So what this method does. So first it will try to find by ID. So from the category repository, it will try to find by ID and user ID, or else throw. So it will throw an entity not found exception. So here I would identify a first scenario, which is a nominal scenario. So when everything is fine, we have the category, we have everything, and we have the complete to do request. So we should create a to do successfully. All right. So we have a second scenario, which is when this method, this call, throws an entity not found exception. So this is the second method that I need to write. So this is my second test method. All right. So then we have also another case. So here in this request, what do we have? So we have this information: title, description, start date, start time, and date and time, and we have category ID. So one of the scenarios, we have also that this category ID, for example, might be null. And when this one is null, so I'm also expecting an entity not found exception. So you might say I'm doing this twice, or like I'm writing 2 tests for checking the entity not found exception, but the answer is no. So the first one is I will use a category ID, so it's not null, but it does not exist in my database. All right, or like let's say in my mock. All right. And the second one is this object is completely null. So it has the null value. So this is what I will proceed with as the beginning. And then we will also read and check this update to do and write tests for that as well. All right. So let's start with that. So here, as I mentioned, we identified the objects that we need to inject. And here, the first thing, I will create a nested class. So I will create a class in here. So this class, so it's just a way to group scenarios. All right. So here I will create, for example, create to do tests. All right. So this one or this class, I will use it to test the create to do scenario. All right. So the first thing I need to do, I need to give it a display name. So let's call it create to do tests. All right. And there is one condition. So here, let's say, okay, so let me first add a test class or a test method. And let's just call it test. All right. So I just want to show you something because there is an annotation which is really important. So here, the first thing, we have a compilation issue. So this test in nested class will not be executed. All right, because we have a test class in here and then we created a nested class. So this one will not be executed unless we tell JUnit that this is a nested class and it needs to be executed. All right. So there is an annotation called nested. All right, so it's from JUnit or JUnit Jupyter API. All right, so when we use this one, we will be able to execute or like to run this class, whether separately or along the test suite or like the test file. All right, so here, just one thing I want to mention in here. So this is just a way to organize things. So you don't need to create nested classes, but you can also put all the test methods under the main test class in here. But honestly, I recommend this very well, because this is well, I highly recommend this. So this is what I meant. This is what I wanted to say. So I highly recommend using nested classes because it's a really nice way to organize things. So here, when you read this test class, you know that you are testing the create to do. All right. So like you are focusing on the create to do scenarios. All right. So now if I run this empty class, we will see the result in here. So here we have our so this is the main class, and here we have the subclass or the first nested class create to do test, and we have the test method in here. All right. So now I will create my first method. So here I will keep the test, and also I will add a display name. So this one, let's say, should create to do successfully when valid request and category exist. All right. So when valid request and category exist. All right. So this means what? This means the first scenario that I mentioned earlier. So this is the successful or like the complete scenario. I have the complete to do, this one. I have the complete to do request, like nothing is missing. The category also exists in my database or in my mock, generally speaking. All right. So here, let's say, or let's call this one should create to do successfully. So successfully. That should be fine. All right. So now we will use an approach which is very known, which is called the given. So it is called given, and then when, and then. So given, when, then. So this given, when, then means what? So given some input, or like giving this initial state, when executing this logic, then expect this result. All right. So like this is what given, when, then means. All right. So here, what do we have? So the first thing we want to have, or like we want to create a to do. So my given information are the following. So to do request and user ID. All right. So I will create here a final string user ID equals, let's call it maybe just user123, just to keep things simple. And then I will have also some other things, and I will explain them just in a few seconds. Then what I have, so I have my final string, so final string result equals my to-do service dot create to-do. So here I will keep this one for as null for the moment, and I will continue it later on. Then I need to assert not null, so assert not null, and here we can import the static method from well, not Hibernate, but from this one, from assertions dot assert not null. All right, so I want to assert not null the result. So this result should not be null. We will add also like some other assertions later on in here, but we will come back to this in a few moments. All right, so there is also one thing when I focus, so when I change the focus or when I save, you will see some changes in here. So this is because I have like some actions on save, so this will add this. So let me explain it easily so you don't. All right, so it's an editor and then code style. So exactly, so I have my code, my own code style defined in here. So this is the one I'm using, and here so on save, so autosave, I guess, yes. So there are actions on autosave, and here for example I want to reformat code, optimize and rearrange and run cleanup code, and this is what we'll be doing. It will automatically apply everything that I defined in my code style in here. All right, so when I do apply and when I save, or like when I lose the focus, it will automatically apply the code style that I already defined. So if you later on when you see the code style, if you want to have it, just drop a comment and I will share it with you in the GitHub repository for the next time. All right, so now I guess we understand the given one then. So given my input, when I execute the create to do, I expect this output. All right, so this is the first thing. Then we have something else that we can also identify. So what do we have in here? So here we have a to-do request. All right, we have also a category, we have a to-do, and we have a user. All right, and then we have an update to do. So we have a to-do update request, and so forth. And then when we fetch the data, we have a to-do response. All right, so what I will do in the beginning, so here after declaring this to-do service implementation, I will create few things. So the first thing, I will create a private category, so just an object category, and I will call it test category. All right, I will do the same for to do. So I have a private to do, let's call it test to do, and the same for private to do request. So to do request, let's call it test to do request, and also we will have private, so private to do update request, let's call it test to do update request. So this one we will use it later on, but I'm just creating it from now. All right, and we have finally a private, so that was wrong, a to do response, let's call it test to do response. All right, so this is what we have, or like what we need. So now I need to initialize these objects, not all of them, but for now I need this test category, test to do, and this test request. Why I need to initialize this? So because in my case I will almost use the same request. So like this is what I have in mind. Okay, so like this is how I'm imagining things. We might change it, but I think this is how it's going to be. So the first thing, as I mentioned, we have a to-do request. So I will initialize it. So instead of re-initializing the to-do request every time in each method, so I can create it as a global variable in my test class, and then I can initialize it before executing every method. And how I can do that? So we have a method called before each. So this means, so this before each, so let's call it void setup. So this before each, let's see here. So let's download the source and let's check the documentation. So before each is used to signal that the annotated method should be executed before each test, repeated test, parameterized test, test factory, and test template. All right. So whenever you have a method annotated with one of these annotations, this before each method will be executed. So now we call it setup because we want to set up a few things. All right. So let's first start with our test category. So let's say this dot test category equals my category dot builder dot build. So I'm going to build a category. All right. So let's give it an ID. So let's call it maybe cat or category. I think that would be better. And then let's give it a name. So it will be work, for example, like work category. And then let's give it a description. So work related tasks, if you want to, and then dot build. So this is my test category. All right. And then I will create a test to do. So this one. All right. So I will initialize my test to do. So this dot test to do equals to do the dot builder dot build. So here, so I will just initialize it. Not last modified, but ID. So the first thing, let's call this one to do 1, 2, 3, for example, and then let's give it a title, just a title. Let's call it test to do, just to keep it simple. And then let's give it a description. Let's call it test description. And let's give it a start date. So start date, it's gonna be local date dot now. So local date dot now. And let's give it an end date, for example. So it will be, for example, like local date dot now plus days 1. So like it ends tomorrow, for example. And let's give it dot start time. And it's gonna be local time dot off, for example. So let's say local time dot off, and let's say it starts at 9 o'clock, and for the end time, let's say it ends at 5 o'clock. Just a second. Just an example, sorry. So done, let's say false, so it's not done yet. And here we have a user. So we know that for our to do, we have a user who is the owner of this to do. All right. So the user, I will keep it for now. Because we need to create a test user. That's it. And then we need the category, and it's gonna be this dot our test category. All right. And then we just build. So here I will just go up and I will create a final user. Let's call it test user equals user dot builder dot build. All right. So here simply we will create I don't know, like just user. So let's give it an ID. So let's say user 1, 2, 3, and then let's give it a first name. Let's say just John, and a last name John Doe. So Doe in here, not does, but Doe. And let's give it an email. So just an email. And here for the email, let's say just john.doe at mail.com, or like at example.com if you want to. All right, so this is our test user. All right, so now here let's assign this test user to our to do. Okay, so then we have our category, we have our to do. The next thing we need is to initialize this to do request. All right, so since this is the one that we will need, so this dot to do request, not repository, so we call it test to do request equals to do request dot builder dot build. So this one, let's give it a title. So the title, let's call it new to do, since this will represent our new to do. And then description, let's say new description. And for the start date, I will just maybe copy this one for the start date until start time. So, and in here I can change a few things. So start date, let's say now, and for the end date, let's say tomorrow, for example. And here I want this one to start at 10 o'clock and ends at 6 o'clock, just to make it a little bit different from the to do what we have in here. And then we need, of course, our category ID, which will be category 1 to 3, as we mentioned in here. All right. So then we will come back later on to the update request and the to-do response. So now we set up this one. Okay, so now every time I execute any test that I have in here, this method will be executed first. All right, so let me also show it step by step. So first we created a test user, then we created a test category, and then a test to do object, and then we have our test to do request. Okay, all right, so this is what I mentioned before, like by the auto formatting. All right, so I'm gonna reduce this one, and I will come back to the first method that we want to implement or like to test. So should create to do successfully. And in here, when I call this one, so when I call this one, I will use my test, my to do request, or like test to do request. So to do request, or let me keep the names simple or like much simpler. So this one I will keep it as test to do. Sorry, it just navigates. This one I will just rename it to do request. And this one I will just keep it to do update request, because honestly I see that the name is too long and sometimes it hides, it gets hidden inside the code. All right, so now when I call this create to do using this to do request, I will expect this one. But before that, before coming to this part, we still have few things to do in here. How to identify this? Let's come in here. So the first thing when we read this method, so the first thing we have check and return category. So this is something that we need to mock. All right, so we need to mock the response of this method call. So when we call find by ID and user ID, we need to return a category object. All right, so this is the first thing. Then if I go up in here, so then we have also this mapper.todo. So like we have a mapper.to-to-do. So like we need also to mock this call. And then this one we doesn't need since it's like a simple set. And finally, we need also to mock this one. All right. So like mocking means we need to provide kind of, we need to tell Mockito or our code when this method gets executed, return this result. All right. So it's exactly this way. All right, so now let's move on and start mocking our object. So the first thing I want to mock is I want to mock my category repository.find by ID and user ID. All right, so here when, so I can use when, and this way. So why it jumped there? Sorry. So all right, so import static method. So this one is from, let me show you. So it's from org.mockito.mockito. All right, so it's just a static method, so that's why I can import it statically. So when category repository dot, and then this method, this is the method I want to test. So find by ID and user ID. And here I can be precise about the object or like the values that I want to pass or not. So here we have two options. So if I want, I can say, for example, any. So I say any string or any value in here and also any value in here. But in this case, I want to be precise because I want to test or like I want to mock it for exactly this user and exactly the category ID that we already defined in our category in our to-do request. All right, so then we have here another method called then return. All right, so we have a bunch of methods, but the one we need then return. So we want to return a value. All right, so what do we want to return? I want to return an optional.of test category. All right, so why an optional? Because this method in here, because this find by, it returns an optional. All right, so that's why I need to also return an optional method. So the next one, what do I have? So I have also the mapper, right? So here I'm also calling an extra service or another service to do something, which is mapping. So let's also mock this one. So when to do mapper dot to do of my to-do request. So when I pass my to-do request, then I want to return something. All right, so then return my test to do. All right, so here let me just keep it simple. So when we pass, so here we are passing a request, right? So then I need to check the category. So this is the first mock I did in here. So when we fetch, so when we call this method to fetch or like to find this category by ID and user ID, and this is the category ID and this is the user ID, then return this one. All right, so like this is the object that I already prepared. Now the next one, when I want to transform this to do request, I want you to return me this test to do so I can continue doing my job. All right, so this is the second mock. The third one is I want to mock this one. So this is what I want to mock next, so the save method. So now when I think the auto completion is completely fine. So when to do repository.save, and when I want to save this test to do, but here I will change this one, I want then to return my test to do. So here instead of saving or like mentioning that I want to test a to do, I can say I want to test any, but here I can be precise, a to do.class. So when I save any object of to do of type to do.class, I want to return the test to do. All right, so now I mocked all the things or like all the steps that are required in order to create a to do. So then I just need to call, so this is the when. So when I call my create to do service, then I want to expect a few things. All right, so and then I want to assert equals. So I want to assert that equals. So here I have, for example, to do 1, 2, 3 to be equals to my result. Why to do 1, 2, 3? Because our test to do in here, so we initialize it with to do 1, 2, 3. We need to make sure that the mock works, that everything works. All right, so this is not the only thing. So here you might say, okay, so I already provided what needs to be returned in here, and I'm also testing if the value is the same. So this is good because we need to make sure that the value did not change along the execution or like along the different instructions in our create to do method. This is the first thing. Then how to make sure that this method has been called, and also this one has been called and this one has been called. We can do it as follows. So we can use verify. So this verify is also from Mockito. So verify that category repository dot find by user ID has been called. All right, so like this verify, what it does, so here from the documentation, so verifies certain behavior happened once. All right, so like it verifies. So here also we have a verify. So this is the mock we want to verify, and we can also verify that it has been called at least once. All right, so here we can do the same, and here we can use times, not timeout but times, and let's say 1. All right, so this means that I want to verify that this category repository was called only one time. We can also, for example, if it is called 2 times, we can also change it to 2, and so forth. All right, so this is the first thing. Then we can do the same for the mapper. So verify that the mapper, let's also use times, it's also completely fine. And then to do with any, and here we can, as I mentioned, we can be precise. All right, so we can do to do request. This will verify that this to do mapper dot to do with exactly this parameter that has been called. All right, and finally, so well, not finally, I guess we can add some other checks. So also I want to verify that my to do repository, so to do repository, and let's say also times, so times 1 dot save, and then my to do or test to do. All right, so that has been called at least once. So now we have something in between in here that we did not check. So here we set to do dot set category our category object. So we want to make sure that this one also was set. So let me add a comment in here. So let's say I want to verify that category is set on to do. All right, so that I want to make sure that the category has been set. So I can use the verify and then my to do repository. And when I call the save method, so here I have something called arg that. All right, so argument that. So here it will take a lambda expression. So let's say it's a to do, and then let's execute our lambda. So then to do dot get category, sorry, not equals, but to do dot get category dot get ID dot equals category 1 to 3. So this means that when we execute this save method, I want to ensure that one of the arguments, so like the argument of this to do, I want to make sure that my to do dot get category dot get ID dot equals to this one. But here, if something goes wrong, we might have a null pointer exception in here. So let's also try to fix that one. So let's say to do dot get category is different from null and this one. All right, so like we want to make sure that we have the category and then we can check for the ID. All right, so now let's go ahead and run this method. So whether I can directly execute the method or execute the full class, so I'm going to reduce this one. So execute the full to-do service implementation or just execute this nested class. So it's up to you, but let's go ahead and execute everything and make sure that everything works as expected. So first of all, you see that unit testing with mocking is super fast. All right, so like it's only half a millisecond almost, and then everything has been everything is fine. And also let me show you the formatting in here. So yeah, so when you see this one, so it's from my own formatting. I can also disable it for the next videos, but just let me know. All right, so now let's go back in here. I think I can close also this too. So I will collapse this one and I will create another method. So this method, it will test the following scenario. So here we know that when we try to fetch a category by ID and user ID, it might throw an entity not found exception. So let's test this scenario. So here I will say it's a test and then display name. And here I would say should throw entity not found exception when category not found. All right, so when the category is not found, I should see or I should expect a not found or an entity not found exception. All right, so let's say void should throw entity. Let me copy this one just to go faster. Entity not found exception when category not found. All right, so now we have our test. So the same thing, we need to follow the same pattern that we did before. All right, so we want to mock everything, but here there is something. So we don't need to mock everything that we have in here, but we just need to mock the first one. So it doesn't make sense to mock this one. Also, it does not make sense to mock this one, since when this one throws an entity not found exception, automatically the code will not continue executing these parts. All right, so this is how you need to think about it. So let's first let's say given when then. So here we have given, and then let's say final string user ID. Let us call it all right, so let's call it just user ID, and then we have the when. So we have our assumption. Yeah, so now we have our assumption. So when right, so okay, thanks for the auto completion. So when I call my category repository dot find by, so request dot get category ID and user ID, all right, so then I want to return an empty object. All right, so it should be empty or like optional dot empty. So this, when this one is empty, so this will result in throwing this entity not found exception. All right, so then once I have this one, so here I can have a when and then at the same time. All right, so when and then. So here what I want to do, I want to have to fetch or like to get the entity, or like sorry, not the entity but the exception, which is the entity not found exception. I want to catch the, or like to get the entity not found exception, so I can make sure that everything is as expected. And especially, so for example, I want to make sure that this message is printed and so forth. So here, let's say entity not found exception, let's call it exception equals, we have here in the methods, in the assertion methods, we have a method called assert throws. All right, and this assert throws, it takes mainly two parameters. So the first one is the entity or the exception class, and the second one is the method that you want to execute and should throw this exception. All right, so here entity not found exception is the first parameter, and then it's a lambda expression as you can see here, and then to do service dot create to do, when I passed my to do request and user ID, I expect to receive or like to throw or like I expect an exception to be thrown in my code. So first let's assert equals. So here I want to assert that this message equals my exception dot get message. All right, so like this null point, this entity not found exception contains an object or an attribute called message. So I want to make sure that the message returned is the same as this one. All right, so this is the first assertion that I want to do. Also here, maybe to make it a little bit dynamic, so let's say with ID, and then so let's go back in here, so we don't have a space after ID. Let's maybe add it in here first. So with ID, and then let's say maybe let's get it from the to do request. Yeah, so let's get it from the to do request dot get category ID. All right, so this is the first thing that I want to assert. Then I want to verify that this method has been called. So as we did here before that, so we want to make sure that this method has been called at least. All right, so category repository dot find by ID and user ID, I want to make sure that this one has been called. All right, so then what I can also check is I want to check that no interaction or like this code has not been called. So like this one should not be called, and also this method should not be called. So this one, we can do it in two different ways. So where is the to do service? So this one, this is the mapper. So we can use this one, and oops, sorry. So we can use this one, and here we can say times 0. All right, so we can say 0 in here. So I want to make sure that this method was not called. All right, so let me quickly execute this test first. All right, so let me execute it first and make sure that everything is fine. So the test passes. All right, so and here if I change this one to 1, for example, just to verify that this to do mapper has been called at least once. So let me open this, make it a little bit bigger, and when I rerun the test, it should fail. All right, and the failure in here, if I scroll down, it will say wanted but not invoked. All right, so this means that to do mapper.todo with this to do request object, it was wanted, so I'm expecting it to be called, but it was never called. So this is why it fails. So when I switch it back to 0, it works. So also we have another, like a better method, I would say. All right, so here verify, we have another method called verify no interaction. All right, so no interactions with this class. So let's clean up this one, because I think the second method, the second one is much cleaner. So I just want to make sure that verify no interactions for this object at all. All right, so let's do the same, but for this one, it should be the to do repository. All right, so if you want to be more precise, you can also use the times with the 0 value. So let's rerun this again, and now the test should pass. All right, so now we are done with the second method. So let me reduce this one, And now, so just to recap, so what we did. So here we did not mock everything. We only mocked what we want to expect. And why we did that? Because we know when this method throws an exception, all this will not be executed. So it doesn't make sense to mock it. All right. So then I just executed or like asserted that the method should throw an exception. So this method should throw an exception, and then I will just want to catch or to save this exception to make sure that everything is fine from the message. And also like I want to make sure that the create or the category repository .find by ID and user ID has been called. And also I want to make sure that the mapper and the repository, they did not interact or like had no interactions. All right. So this is the second method. Now let's move on to the next one, which is it should handle, for example, like null category in the request. So when I pass a null category or like a null value for my category ID, this one also should be handled. All right. So let's move on and implement this one. All right. So now I think things are starting to get much easier after we implemented at least the first two ones. So let's create another test class with a display name. And this one, let's say, should handle null category ID. Null category ID in request. All right. So let's say void and then should handle null category, or let's say just cat ID for short, in request, for example, or just null category ID as you want. All right. So then the same thing we will do the same. So here we have something. So let's start with the given. So we have a final string user ID. Let's call it user-123 as we did before. And here is the thing. So we have our to-do request dot set category ID to null. So this something you should not forget, because we know that the to-do request, so the one we have in here, the to-do request, it comes with a category ID which is not null. So do not forget to set it or like to reset it to null. So this is very important. Now we need to mock. So the thing or like the only mock we need in here, so I will copy it, but I will just change a few things. So here, when I call this find by user ID, by ID and user ID, but I will not pass this one, but I will say null. So when I pass a null value and a user ID, it should return an empty. All right. And then in the same way, I guess I can keep copying this from here. So I guess I can copy everything. So now I will paste this one in here. So then when this happened, I want to make sure that I have the same thing that I have also, like we can also assert something else. So let's say assert not null. So assert not null of my exception. All right. And then I can verify that this has been called and all these two, they have not been called. So let's go ahead and run the test. So once you write the first test, the rest should be kind of easy. All right. So now that all the test passed, but now let's execute all of them and make sure all the three tests that we wrote are passing successfully. So here, as we can see, all the tests passed successfully. All right. So now we can move on and implement the tests for the update to do. So this also, I think this might be, and this will be almost similar to what we wrote, but we have few different things. So here we need to fetch the to do, we need to find to fetch the category, we need to merge, and we need to save. So we have like, it's a little bit slightly different, but it's not different at all since we already implemented the first one. So now we just need to initialize this object, and also, so for the response, I guess we need it later on, but here we just need to initialize and update a to-do update request. So let's move on and implement the update to-do tests. All right, first I will collapse this one, and I will just prepare myself for creating or like for implementing the next one. Let me update this one to update to-do tests. And now let's go back to the code and analyze it step by step before moving forward. So what do we have in here? So we have an update method. We take, or like it receives as a parameter, an object of type to do update request. Let's have a look at it. Since, as I mentioned, I don't know the code, I'm not the one who wrote it, and my first task is to implement tests for this class. So we have a title, description, start date and date, start time and time, and a category ID. So when I go back in here, so then we try to fetch the to-do. So the to-do, we have it, we also receive it as a parameter along with the user ID. So the first thing I need to have is my to-do should exist. All right. And then I need to check the category also and make sure that the category exists. Once all these conditions are true, then I proceed and merge and then set the category and then finally save the updated to-do or the to-do to update. All right. So let's proceed with that. Now, what do I have? As I mentioned, I have my to-do update request. So instead of just recreating it every time, I will just initialize it in my setup in here. So in my setup in here, I will just initialize my to-do update request as follows. So like it's gonna be almost the same as this one, but let's say here this to-do update request equals to-do update request dot builder dot build. All right, so semicolon in here, let's scroll up. And then I would add a title. So let's say updated to do, for example, updated to do. And let's say description, updated description. And for the start date and time, I would just copy this one and just make some changes. So, and let's say, for example, the end date, let's say maybe +2. And here let's add 1 hour for the start and the end time. And of course, my category ID, it's gonna be category 1, 2, 3. All right, so now I have my to-do update request. I think I can also collapse this method to save some space. And now I can come back in here. So first test is my following test. So here let's add a display name and let's say should update successfully a to-do, for example. Or let me, so just to be precise, when to-do and category, so it just for you to, so you can understand what I'm writing in here, what and what I want to do. So when to-do and category, both of them exist. So let's say should successfully update to do. Just I will keep the name simple like this. So let's fix the typo. And now, so the first thing, as we did before, let's say start with our given. I have my final string user ID, so I need this information. Let's call it user 123. And then we have our string to do, or to do ID equals, let's call it maybe to do 123. So why I need that? Let me fix this one. Because this update method also needs, or like takes, a to do ID as a parameter. So that's why I need to declare it in here. So now the first thing I need to do is to just start mocking my objects. So the first call I need to mock is to find by ID. So here, now when my to-do repository, not the request, and then find by ID, to do ID, then I will return an optional.off test to do. All right, so like this is the to do that I want to update. So the second one is when my category repository dot find by user ID, find by ID and user ID of this one, then, so maybe I will break the line, then return optional of, so not test to do, but let's use our test category object. All right. And finally, when we perform a save, so when to do repository dot save, and here as before, as any to do dot class, then return my test to do. All right. So here, well, let's move to the when. So when I execute my update, so here, when I call my to-do service dot update to-do with my update to-do, or like to-do update request, to-do ID and user ID, then I want to expect the following. All right, so then I want to make sure that everything went smoothly. So let's say verify that my to-do repository dot find by ID has been called. All right, as I mentioned, you can also add times in here. So you can add ×1, for example, if you want to, or like just make it empty, because I think by default it will check that this one has been called at least once. So here, let's say category repository dot find by user ID, and by ID and user ID also has been called. And then let's make sure that our mapper dot merge. So because here we are calling the merge, not the transformation or like to do, that this one also has been called. And also we need to make sure that the to do repository dot save and my to do test has been called as well. So we can also do the same in here as we did before. Where is it? No, this method, or the first one. So I can also copy this one, that to make sure that the category has been set. All right, so I'll just copy paste it in here. So now you will see that everything will go a bit faster, since like we can copy paste few things. All right, so category. Yeah. All right. So now I guess we can check. And also this one, if you want to, we can do it differently. All right. So let me show you how to do that. So I want to do assert equals that test category equals this test to do dot get category. So this means that I want to verify that category is set. Okay. So verify category is set. So now let's go and run this method, and let's see if it's going to pass or not. And yes. All right. So here, if we change something, we will see that the test will fail. And this is maybe what we will see later on. All right. So now we have our update, or like should update successfully a to do. Let's move on and implement the next method, which should throw an entity not found exception when a to do not found. All right, let's move to the next one. I will copy these two annotations. I can collapse this one and here. So it should throw, so let's say it should throw entity not found exception, entity not found exception, to do not found. All right, so when to do not found. So let's create our method, should throw entity not found exception when to do not found. So this is our method. So here, as we did before, we just need to mock that when we fetch the to do by ID, we need to return an optional dot empty. All right, so I will try to take this one, and all right, so here we have our user ID and to do ID, and here I will just return an optional dot empty. So then I will create a final entity not found exception, and it will be assert throws entity not found exception dot class, and then lambda expression. When I execute the method update to do with this parameter, I assume, or I expect, that an exception should be thrown. So first we need to assert equals that we have this message. So to do not found with ID to do ID, and this should be exactly the exception dot get message. And then we can also verify that find by ID has been called once, and no interaction with category repository, mapper, and to do repository. All right. So thanks to the auto completion, I think this was super fast. But one thing we need to change in here. So here we cannot verify that there was no interaction. Since we have this to do repository, we will have an interaction with that. So now it will be verify that this to do dot repository And then here, instead of times, we also have another method called never, when we call the method save with any parameter. All right, so we want to verify that this to-do repository.save method has never been called. So let's go ahead and run this method and see if everything goes fine. So the method is successful and the test passes. All right, so then the next one, we want to make sure that that when a category is not found, also an entity not found exception is thrown. So I will copy paste this message, sorry, not message, but this method. So when category not found, category not found. So I will change also this one to category. And now this one, instead of returning an optional.empty, so it should return an optional.of test to do. But I can also replicate this one, or like duplicate it. So now when I call my category repository dot find by ID and user ID, and here it will be my to do update request dot get category ID, and user ID is the same, my user ID, and here I will return an optional dot empty. All right, so now I should also expect the method to throw an entity not found exception, but in here I can change the message. So I need to check the other message that we have in here. So I mean this message right here. So we can copy paste it if you want to. So no category was found for that user with ID blah blah blah. All right, so then we need also to check that the to-do repository.findById has been called. Also, we want to verify that now our category repository.findByUserId, so to do update request.category and user ID, that this one has been called. And also we want to check that we have no interaction with the mapper, and also we want to make sure that the save method has never been called. All right, so let's go ahead and execute this method. So as I mentioned, once you have everything set up, everything should be working fine. So now I think we have something. So no category was found. So I guess I passed the wrong parameter in here. Yeah, so this one should be test category, or like, let's say update request dot get category ID. So that was the failure. So as you can see in here, so it says that we have an assertion failure error. So the expected is no category was found with ID to do 123, because here I just made a mistake, and like when I copy pasted it, it did not change the values. But the actual, so like the real message was that no category was found for that user with ID category 123. So now if I run this again, I expect the test to pass. So yes, the test has passed. And now let's run the full suite. All right, so let's run everything and make sure that everything works as expected. So update to do, all the tests are passing. The same for create to do. So now we implemented the first two methods, or like we tested the first two methods, which are create to do and update to do. So now let's move on and implement the test for this find to do by ID, and then find all, and find all by category, and so forth. So this is what, like, we will continue implementing the tests, or like the methods, one by one. All right, so I'm going to collapse this one. So let's go back to test class, and I guess I can collapse this class right here and this one right here. All right, so let's copy these two annotations, and here let's say find to do by ID. So find to do by ID tests. All right, so let's say class find to do by ID, and then we have also our first one. So I guess I have the annotations. Yes. So here it should return to do response when to do exists. All right, so let's void should return return to do response. Let's just keep it to do response. I'm gonna keep it short. So for this one, we need now to initialize our to do response object. So let's go up in here and let's initialize our to do response. So for the to do response as before, so it's going to be something quite simple. So like it's a simple initialization. So this dot to do response equals to do response dot builder dot build. All right, so let's say ID we have to do 1 2 3, as simple as that, and then let's say title, and let's say test to do, and we have description, let's call it test description, and we have start and end date. We can take this one, and yep, so maybe let's keep it as the original one from 9 to 5, and this one maybe +1, and here let's say done false. All right, so now we have our to do response. Let's move on and implement our first method, which should return our to do, or like the to do response. All right, so here as before, the first thing we have our final string user ID. So all right, so now I think the auto completion is starts working. So sorry, not user ID, but let's say to do ID and to do. All right, so now when we call this to do repository dot find by ID, and then let's say test to do dot get ID, but this one it should be to do ID, the one we just created, then return test to do. All right, so then we want to return our test to do. Let me break the lines, and then we need to mock something else. So we need to mock our mapper. All right, so okay, the auto completion is also working fine. So when we map, so when we call the to do mapper dot to do response of our test to do, then we want to return our to do response. All right, so then, so here we have when, sorry, so here it's a given. So given when then, so when we call, so let's say final to do response result, and when we call our to do service dot find by to do ID, then we want to expect the following. So then in here, so first we want to assert not null of our result, and then we want to assert to add some assertions. All right, so the first one we want to assert equal. So by the way, this was the auto completion from the IDE, which is like, honestly, this is what I was going to write, which is, I think it learns so fast from the code. So here we have assert equals. I want to make sure that this to do response, the one I mocked, is the same as the returned result. All right, and also I want to verify that the to do repository dot find by ID with this to do ID parameter was called at least once, or also, as I mentioned, we can remove the times. This also works perfectly fine and as expected. All right, and then I want to verify that the to do mapper has been called as well. All right, and has been called with exactly this parameter. So let's go ahead and run this one, and I expect it to be successful, so which is the case. So now the next test, I think now it's going to be some kind of a routine or like a repetitive task, since all the tests are the same. All right, so let me duplicate this one. Well, not the same like technically, but always like we need to mock for that case, we need to mock for, and we need to mock and make it return entity not found, and so forth. All right, and here, so let's say should throw entity not found exception when to do not found. So for example, when to do not found, it's as simple as that, not found. All right, so here should throw entity not found exception when to do not found. All right, so here, this one, now I will, instead of passing a to-do ID, I will say non-existing. So non-existing to-do, for example. So like existing, so no non-existing to do. And now the thing is, I just need to mock this one, so I don't need to mock the mapper, so I will remove it. And here I would just want to return an optional dot empty. All right, so we know that when the repository returns an empty optional, or like an optional dot empty, this will throw an exception. So then we want to call this one. And now let me remove this, and I think I still have it in my copy pasting, the one that should throw exception. Let's try to find it. Yes, I guess this one should work. All right, so when I do find to do by ID, and then I pass my to do ID. So let's pass our to do ID as a parameter. So this should return, or like should throw an entity not found exception. All right, and here the message should be as follows. So let's go in here. So it should be no to do found with ID and then to do ID. So let's copy the message as well. And this one also, it should be to do ID. To do ID, what? Yeah, to do ID. And then it should be equals to the exception.get message. And also, like, we can continue on verifying that the find by ID was called. So here, let's maybe copy it from the previous method. So this one, it should be called, and the other ones should be no interactions. All right. So this one should be called and no interaction with the mapper. All right. So let's run the test and make sure that everything is fine. Also, you can go ahead and even assert, so this one, we don't need it. Yeah, so this one, we don't need it. So here it will be when and then at the same time. All right, because like the call is already in here. So let's run the method, and now everything is fine. So the next one is, it should handle null ID to do. So this one, it's gonna be exactly the same as this one. So I'm going to duplicate it, and here it should handle null to do ID. All right, so I don't need this to do ID in here. And now, instead of calling with a to do ID, I will call it with a null value, and then it should return an optional dot empty. So here, when I call it also with a null value, this one, I also expect it to throw an entity not found exception. And also here, let's say, for example, let's write null in here, and then also we can make sure that this one has been called with a null value and no interaction for the mapper. So I need also to change the title in here, should handle null ID, for example, and that's it. All right, so let's run this one, and successful. So I will run all the class, like all the tests that we have in here, and we will make sure that everything is working as expected. So all the tests they passed. So we have the find by, update, and create. So the next ones is like, they're still so simple, to be honest, like finding all to-dos. And for this one, I'm gonna keep it, or like I'm gonna leave it as an exercise for you. And please create a pull request, mention me, or like drop a comment once you create a pull request. I want to review it, I want to see it, and also I would like to show it in my next video, because now I want to move on to something which is much more important, which is like displaying a test report. All right, and also like how we can check the coverage and how we can check the percentage of what we covered in our code. But before that, let me give you some hints and make the exercise clear for you. So here for this find all to-dos for today, for example, so here you need to make sure that in a perfect scenario, it should return a list of to-do responses. All right, and also you have to create another test where you check that it should return an empty list when no to-do exists for that user. All right, for that specific user, exactly. So then it should return multiple to-do responses when multiple to-dos exist. All right, so like this is for the first one. And then we have the next one, which is find all to-dos by category. All right, so finding all to-dos by category. So the first test, like the one I'm thinking about. So please, if you have more tests, or like if you think about other scenarios, also drop them or like create them in the pull request, and I will review it in my next video. So for this one, first we should return the to-do filtered by category and user. And also we need to return an empty list when nothing exists for that user. And I would say that's it. So like these are the two test cases. And then find all do to do's. So this one, it should return like do to do's for a given user, and also like it should return an empty list when no do to do exists. So like this means you need to create or like to mock the response that no to do is due. So like all of them are not done yet. So you need also to return that one. And then you need also to test the delete by. So like the delete to do by ID, this one should be tested. And how we test this one? So we need to like test the successful scenario, and also we need to handle deletion for non-existing to do, and of course like we need to handle null values or like null IDs. All right. So these are the tests that I'm expecting, and also you can write some tests for this one. So this one I will not announce how you can do it, but I really would like to know how you will do it. All right. So please, as I mentioned, create a pull request in the project or in the repository and mention me. Also like drop a comment, and I will have a look and review the code in my next video before we move on to the integration tests. Now let's move on to the next part and show you how we can display a complete test report with test coverage and all these details. All right, so now let me show you how you can run the tests with coverage. So from here, you can run, and you have the option, run to do service implementation test with coverage. So let's first run it and like wait for the coverage. So now once everything is done, so it will show how much or like what is the code coverage for this one. All right. So when we switch to the class, we can see something like this. So when you see this green part like right here, so this means that the method has been covered correctly, or like let's say fully, just if we might say so. But when you see it red as like in here, so this means since we did not test this method yet, so this means that this method has not been covered. Also, when you have kind of a mix, so it might be, for example, like red in here and you have some part which is green, or like the other way around. You can have, for example, like this green in here and this part is red in here, or like it might be also yellow. It depends on how like the coverage level. So you can understand how much coverage you have already added to your classes, to your class or methods. Also, as you can see in here, you have like classes, which is like 1 of 1, which is like 100%, but the method we covered only 55%, which is like 5 methods out of 9. All right, and for the lines, we covered 17 out of 30 line, which is 56% of our code. But when for example, when you run your code on a pipeline or so, you won't also like to see the coverage. So when the project grows, sometimes it becomes really heavy, and sometimes really impossible to run test coverage or to check the coverage for the whole classes, or like for the whole project on your IDE. So for that, we can use a plugin. So we have so many things. We can use, for example, SonarQube, which is like one of the most recommended tools for code quality, but sometimes like you need so it's not a free tool, so you need to pay for it. You can also like use it for free for some open project, and like it's really limited in some configurations. But we can also use another, or like use a plugin, which is a Maven plugin, which is called JCoco. And we can run the tests, and we can see the coverage, and we can see all the details. So let me show you how we can set up and add JCoco to our project. So the first thing, we need to go and open our pom.xml file, and then we have here, so let me try to collapse almost everything. I can collapse dependencies, so I can collapse the first plugin, the second one. So Jacoco is a Maven plugin that we can install. So I have it already, like I have already the configuration, so I will not waste your time so much with like the details and writing all the lines, but I will just paste it and I will explain it line by line. All right, so here we have our plugin. So first thing, we need to create a plugin tag, just like we have all the plugins, and then we need to specify the group ID, artifact, and the version. So the group ID is org.jacoco, and then the artifact is Jacoco Maven plugin, and the version, I think the most recent one is 0.8.11. I'm not sure, maybe there is a new one, but I think like the latest one I remember is 0.8.11. And then we have a list, or like we can specify a list of executions. All right. So for these executions, we can set up, or like we can identify multiple executions. So the first one, we want our first execution, and the goal is we want to prepare the agent. The next, we want to execute and generate a report. All right. So at which phase? When we run the test phase. So this means when I run the phase, the goal is to generate a report. All right. And also here we have another execution, and here it's Jacoco check, and we have a goal, which is we want to do a check. And what we want to do exactly. So we have a bunch of rules, or like we can define a bunch of rules right here. So here we have only one rule. So here we have an element package. So like we want to check the packages, and here we can set limits. All right. So the counter, what we want to count is the line. All right. So like we want to count the line. How many lines did we cover? And here the value is the covered ratio. So like how much, it's exactly the same as we see here, almost the same. All right. And then here we can set up a minimum coverage. What is the minimum coverage that we want? And in this case, it's 80%. All right. So like 0.80 means 80%. All right. So now we have everything. So the plugin is up and ready, or like it's installed and ready. And now we can use it. So how we can use this? So let's open the terminal in here. And now all I need to do is to run a command. So I will use the Maven wrapper that I have in here. So here I have a file called mvnw, which is the Maven wrapper. And for Windows, you can directly use the mvn wrapper.cmd. All right. So now what I want to do, I want to execute clean test. So like this is like a simple Maven command. And now the extra parameter that I want to pass is Jacoco :report. So I want to generate the test report once all the tests passes. All right. So now I will hit enter. So this will start building and running all the tests for my application. And once it's done, I will show you what it will generate. So here we have build success. So if one test fails, we will see like a build failure in here, and it will display what was failing exactly. So let me open this one, and I will make one of the tests fail. So let's say maybe this one. And now if I run it again, we will see that the build will fail, and it will point us to this to exactly this test method, which called should handle null ID. And as you can see here, we have test failure, and as we can see, we have test runs. So we have 10 tests, and we have one failure, and the failure is in this to do service implementation test, and then find to do by ID tests, and then should handle null ID. All right, which is like the line, I think 336, which is this one. And we have also like all the details we want. So the expected is this, but we found that one. All right. So let's bring this back, and now let's build successfully our test. All right. So let's see. And then once this one is generated, I will show you what we can do next and how we can check that. So what do we have in here? So in the target, we see that we have a generated file. I think it's under site. So under site, yes, we have an index.html. All right, so like under the target, you will see site and then Jakuku. And here we see all the packages that we have, and you can open the index.html. So let me open it in a browser. So let me bring it here. I'm going to zoom in. And now we see that this is the project name, by the way, because like I did not change it. So this is our project name. And here we see that we have all the coverage and all the details. So we have security, which is covered by 44%, and we have our to-do implementation, which is covered by 67%. So let's go inside here. So here we have our to-do service implementation. And when I click on it, so here we will see all the methods that we tested, all right? And including like if we have some Lambda and so on and so forth. So let's click on any of it. And here we see that this code has been covered. So like it's the same as I showed you in IntelliJ. So also this one has been covered, but when we scroll down here, we see that this part was not covered, and so on and so forth. Also this one has been covered since it was included in these parts, or like in these methods. So now if I go back here, and for example, let's check security. So our security config, since it's just a configuration class, so this means like no tests are needed. So Jakuku understands that these are test classes. So for example, we have the exceptions not covered yet, user is not covered yet, and so on and so forth. So we will try to implement all the tests and bring the coverage up to 80%. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, so here now we have a complete test report. Okay, so for example, for the category, we have this implementation, and we see that part of it is tested. Maybe like this SLF4J annotation is somehow considered as a coverage, or like by default covered, but the rest we see that it's not covered. So if you want to, you can also consider creating category service implementation and the rest of the services as an exercise for you. And as I mentioned, like just create a pull request, and I will be very happy to review it, to give you my opinion. And also like we will continue implementing all this together, but I want to focus on the most important parts and like to show you as much as possible. So now we have our coverage report. So now let me talk to you and let me tell you a little bit what we will do next. So the next part is maybe we will not continue implementing unit tests, but we will focus more on integration tests. And why I want to focus on integration tests? Because I will show you how to use test containers, because this is very important, and I will explain and show you why we need to use test containers. All right guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned from it as usual. Before we end this video, if you are not subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and leave a comment what you liked about this video and what you want to see next. Of course, we know that next it will be integration tests, test containers, and so on and so forth. But what are the topics that you want to see? And of course, don't forget to share this video with your friends. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.